So this interview is with good friend and polar explorer Martin Hartley. Martin is photographer, explorer, conservationist, scientist, and we actually did this interview a few months back now when I had just come back from a very brief Antarctic trip, and I was speaking to him from hotel quarantine just outside Heathrow, which he found rather amusing. And that really sort of sums up Martin and his great sense of humour and approach to life. Martin's also the type of guy that keeps bottles in his freezer. He has 4 drawers in his freezer. 3 of them are full of bottles full of ice from the Arctic, Antarctic and Greenland. Only 1 drawer has full food in it. So that really sums up Martin. But this is a great chat with Martin from a few months back. So apologise if it's a little bit sort of dated, but he's a great guy, great explorer, running an expedition with us again soon, and I hope you enjoy it.
I just wanted to have a chat with you. So really about sort of your background, where you've come from, what you're doing now. Obviously, we're doing this from, I'm doing it from hotel quarantine, which is great, after a failed trip to one of the polar areas, which you're so, special in. This was Antarctic, 48 minutes on the ice, which was great, which I know we've chatted about already. So that would probably go down in your books as a failed expedition, would it?
Well, you got there. That's an achievement. You got there and back safely. That's an achievement.
That is true, and I think that probably sort of leads us into sort of your background, doesn't it? In terms of, how do you put these expeditions together? In terms of maybe tell us a bit first about who you are, what you do, what's your expertise, why we're chatting, because we've probably known each other for sort of 4, 5, 6 years now, and sort of crossed over on sort of really sort of the area of sort of tourism, which I obviously work in. You work more in expeditions and on that sort of science-based side of things as well, and sort of opening that people's eyes up to that. So maybe just quickly tell us a bit about your background, what you've done.
So how old am I now? 53. So I've probably been a photographer traveling the world on expeditions since, I did my first expedition when I was 13. I walked around the UK with 2 friends of mine who were both 13. Didn't see our parents for 5.5 weeks. This was back in the day when the word internet hadn't been invented. Maybe I might have seen 1 mobile phone in my entire life in a car.
Yeah.
Phone boxes used to take 2p coins, and a bag of chips was 5 pence. That's how long ago that was. So that might be where I got my taste for being away from home for long distances without any contact with anyone, really. I'm sure if I was to do that journey today, at age 13, my parents would probably be locked up by social services, letting their little boy run around the country on his own.
Exactly.
On the town. The world's changed a bit since then. I've been commissioned to photograph, I don't know how many polar assignments, I've lost count. It was 25 last time I counted, several years ago. Both the North and South Polar regions. I've photographed assignments in deserts and mountains and jungles for all sorts of clients. But my main focus nowadays is the Arctic Ocean specifically, because I realised that working with scientists who know a lot more than we do about what's going on there, or the general public, it's really important to get data collected for them by whatever means necessary, usually on a pair of skis, usually on a transect that they give us, or ask us on the expedition to collect data that they just cannot get, ground truthing data. So that's what I've been doing for the last 16 years, trying to get back up to the Arctic Ocean to collect data in some format for some group of scientists working on how the Arctic Ocean is being affected by the climate and how that affects us in return. So that's what I've been doing as a photographer, embedded with other expeditioners gathering data. So it's not the only thing I do.
Combining the world of photography with science-based data collection, etc., as well on that.
Yeah. And the Arctic Ocean is unique in that unless you're on a ship in the summer, it is totally inaccessible to everyone else, unless you know what you're doing up there. In Antarctica, you can travel on a skidoo to get places, or a tracked vehicle, for example, or you can go on skis, or you can fly in and out quite with relative ease compared to the Arctic Ocean, which is almost impenetrable. So from a scientific point of view, getting data from there is really, really important for scientists, because they just cannot go up there easily and get it.
Yeah. And I think I went to one of your talks, didn't I, at an event in London. Didn't you say that Arctic, something along the lines of Arctic explorers were heroes and Antarctic explorers were wimps? Was that that was a sort of brief summary of it, wasn't it?
I wouldn't put it like that. There's a lot of really strong, brave people who put their
You were very respectful when you said it, but you say that there's a different element of risk, I think, attached to both areas of the world, which, when you're looking at it from a sort of outsider's point of view, you know, they're both sort of polar extremes, and you assume that the risks are similar, but there are inherent different risks in the north rather than the south, I think.
Yeah, I think I was making the comparison that if you compare a journey from land in the Arctic to the North Pole compared to a journey from the edge of the Antarctic coast to the South Pole, the differences are obvious in that the risk is managed so well by the companies that let you in Antarctica. It's almost an Olympic sport now, in that you can set off from the edge of Antarctica to ski to the South Pole without any previous experience on your own and make it there safely. And you can be at any point in between setting off and being picked up at the South Pole, you can be rescued in any kind of weather by any kind of vehicle. So in that respect, you haven't got the psychological issues that play in your mind when you're in the Arctic, which are, once you're dropped off and the plane's gone back from the edge of the Arctic Ocean, there's no guarantee you can be picked up the next day or the next week or at all. So that's the differences between the north and the south.
Yeah.
Which is significant, because it means that every decision you make is critical in terms of safety.
And then the planning and preparation, in terms of, obviously that's something we've chatted about in the past, in terms of whether it's from sponsorship or logistics or whatever, in terms of that's a different beast in the north then, in terms of preparing for these expeditions?
Yeah, so the Arctic season, expedition season, has shrank considerably in the 16 years I've been going up there. The earliest you can set off is when the sun first comes above the horizon, because when you go to the Arctic, you go there at the end of winter or early spring. And in Antarctica, you go visit Antarctica in the summer when there's 24 hours daylight. So at the start of a North Pole expedition, you've got low light and not many hours of daylight if you set off at the end of February, which is the earliest you can set off. And then the season used to run, in terms of safety from a pickup point of view, used to run till the middle of June. Now the season ends in April, or the end of April or the beginning of May, middle of May. I think the insurance runs out for the pilots. Their last pickup is something like, I can't remember now, but the insurance cuts out for the pilots doing sea ice landings quite early in May.
And that's because of the result of global warming, etc. The ice isn't around for as long. It's not as stable. So in terms of sort of landing craft and stuff like that, it's just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's too big a risk for the pilots and for the insurance companies to send a plane out onto the sea ice for fear of it getting stuck, but landing and not taking off again. And it's happened twice. And I think the Twin Otters are something like £25 million each. So that's quite a big asset to sink to the bottom of the sea. So, you know,
so how much in your time of doing it then? You say in the last 16 years or so, what was the time that you could do an expedition like this originally, over a period of how many months was it? And now how many months, in terms of how much is it reduced by?
So I did an expedition in 2003 or 4, which was 99 days long.
Yeah.
And there's been a few expeditions.
Long expedition.
Yeah. I think the longest one is 108 days, I think, by some Russians who crossed from Russia to the North Pole and then across to Canada. That journey is no longer
48
possible.
minutes in Antarctica is not really close to that yet. doesn't really challenge that at the moment. Puts things in context, I suppose, doesn't it? How things have changed.
I'm sure it's a beautiful 48 minutes on your satellite telephone. Memorable.
Exactly. But no, so in terms of, you've done 99 days before, you say, and that season lasted how long normally, in sort of 16 years ago?
So we set off the late February. I don't know the date. It was the end of February from Siberia, and the expedition finished on June the 13th.
Yeah,
I think those are approximate dates. So now, if you do an expedition, you have to be off the ice by the end of April, I think, when the Russian camp Barneo, that's 60 miles south of the North Pole, dismantles and moves off the ice because it's too unstable. And that ice camp, historically, the ice camp has been there every year. The Russians put a scientific base up on the sea ice, 60 miles south of the North Pole every year to do science up there. And also they use that facility to fly in and out tourists who do last degree North Pole camping holidays and expeditions.
So would you, and so, I mean, it's a sort of discussion point that we've sort of had quite a lot, isn't it, in terms of where is tourism good and where is it bad in this arena? You know what I mean? In terms of, obviously, you know, my background is more tourism, yours is more science-based and expedition-based. Do you think that there is room for tourism and travel in the modern world, or do you think that it's purely a negative influence in these areas where we're seeing a huge impact on ice change and the climate, etc.?
I think
because it's something that I struggle with, you know, and I've worked in travel and tourism for 15, 20 years, you know what I mean? And I can't say that the travel and tourism industry is innocent at all. Of course it's not, you know, but where do we go from here, really? It's very difficult, isn't it? Because on one hand, there's the educational aspect of it in terms of, you know, travel and it opens people up to other areas of the world and understanding what's going right or going wrong in certain areas. But equally, it contributes hugely to the issues that we face nowadays in terms of the climate, etc.
Yeah, I think in terms of polar travel, I don't think that if you removed all other sources of travel and people just travel to the polar regions and back, I don't think they'd have any impact on the environment at all. It's the collective travel in terms of airplanes and ships that is the problem, not specifically going to the poles on any journey. So in that respect, and once you get there, of course, your impact has to be reduced when you're there, on the people and on the resources that are there and on the environment. And that's managed well by companies like Natural World Safaris. That impact is reduced to very minimal. It's the companies that go there and take stuff and leave stuff behind that damages, you know, they take everything and leave everything and nothing goes back into the local communities. So there's no place anymore for those kind of companies that take things out and don't put stuff back in.
It's a bit like Everest now, isn't it? You know, in terms of, I was watching, have you seen the new film 14 Peaks, which has just come out, which is fascinating about the guys
Mission
that just
Possible. Mission Possible.
Project Possible, yeah. Very good, actually. And 14 peaks over 8,000 meters in a period of, I think it was just over 6 months or something. I mean, incredible feat. But you see some of the footage there, you know, of the sort of the conga lines literally going up Everest just to attain the summit, etc. And whilst I understand that desire for exploration and stuff, you suddenly look at that and it doesn't matter whether it's that or you look at sort of ships coming to Venice or whatever, or, you know, it's quite scary now, isn't it? Because everything is so accessible.
Yes, and the impact, I don't know enough about the impact that those expeditions have on the journey from getting off the plane in Nepal and then trekking to base camp and back. I don't know what impact. I don't know how that's managed. If it's managed well, then it's sustainable. If it's not managed well, then, you know, things will fall apart very quickly. I know there's been a lot of deforestation to use wood for trekkers in the past. I think that's being managed now by burning kerosene. That's not good either. And then, you know, you've got sanitation problems and water problems along that route. And at every space camp itself, I know expeditions get fined if they don't take all the rubbish out with them. And I don't believe that people physically on the mountain cause any harm.
Yeah.
But on the other side, the people that supply food and shelter for the people trekking to Everest, that is their income. That's their only income.
Yeah.
And you have to look at that as well. And without tourists going to Everest Base Camp, or even the climbers going to climb Everest, these people have not got enough money to sustain themselves. And that's a huge part of their economy. So they have to look at that as well. It's not just a case of looking at the problems created by people going there, climbing a mountain, going back home again. Climbers are inherently responsible people. They go into the mountains because they appreciate nature. They're not there like people say going to a football match who, for example, may not care about the environment, but they're going there to watch football. They don't care what happens between leaving home and getting to the match and back.
Yeah.
I like to think, it's not always the case, I like to think people who do venture into the wilderness do care about the impact they have on it, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So that said, you ask the people who live in the villages about tourism, they'll go, yes, more please.
Yeah. No, it's a fine balance, isn't it, between sort of, the constructive sort of elements that go into the surrounding local communities, etc., but actually sort of trying not to have too much impact on things. So in terms of, obviously, just switching tack slightly, in terms of photography, that's your sort of, what would you say, your sort of portal into exploration, really, isn't it? And to the sort of things that fascinate you, in terms of, I sort of always say that travel has sort of given me the access into sort of the things that I love, whether it's wildlife conservation, photography, the business side of things, etc., as well. And you've used photography for that as well, it seems. Would that be a fair sort of assumption?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a passport's pretty useless in terms of getting to places. It gets you out of the country and back in, and then its job's done. So my camera gets me into people's homes and into their lives and into places I would never be able to venture without a camera, because when you travel with the camera as a professional, you have a sense of purpose and you usually have a job or two to do on the way and a story to tell. And the camera is a great tool for opening doors, literally, into homes, people's lives, and then the legacy of those journeys unfolds when you come back with showing people where you've been and sharing images of what happened and why you were there.
So how did you get into photography then? What was that sort of moment?
So I got, it's funny now looking back, and at the time, it wouldn't have been any kind of memorable moment, but I got an adventure kit for Christmas, age 5.
Doesn't that surprise me?
in it was a plastic water bottle, an army style one with a bit of green mesh and a plastic water bottle. It was probably a metal one in those days, the screw top, a compass, a penknife, which was removed because my parents thought I'd hurt myself with it, and a camera. In terms of an adventure kit, that's a really weird cocktail of things, isn't it? Include a camera in an adventure. And I took it was a plastic camera with 12 exposures on black and white film, and I took them all. Of my sister skipping and a friend. But I do remember quite profoundly going to the field at the back of the house where I lived, age 5, jumping over the stone wall that was there and down by the river in the long grass, thinking I was an explorer, and I didn't think anyone had been down over that wall at that time.
Yeah.
As a kid, your imagination, you can pretend you're anything or anyone or be anywhere. So that might be the nuggets of excitement that stuck with me.
Yeah.
And then I spent most of my adult life growing up wanting to be a vet. I wanted to be James Herriot, being a farm vet.
Yeah.
But my careers advisor, if I can call him that, I'm being very kind.
Yeah.
Back in those days when I was at school, the jobs were accountant, work in a bank, work in a post office, do some peculiar job.
It was more professions, wasn't it? It was sort of rather today it's a bit more sort of, there are grey areas to work in much more on that.
Yeah, and
you're working in a grey area, Martin. That's right. So am I.
Still am.
Yeah.
Folk. I call it folk nowadays. So I didn't think I thought photographer was a person who photographed babies and weddings, and all the other pictures you see were just people who happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
That is part of the skill of photography, is being in the right place at the right time. And as a photographer, you manage that really well, which is why you get commissions to go to places, because that people who commission photographers know what to expect when they bring back, which is the difference between being a professional and not being a professional. Is you send a non-professional photographer out into the field, you never know what they're going to come back with, if anything at all. That's why photographers get paid to do their jobs.
So based on that, in terms of, you've created sort of a niche for yourself, really, as a sort of, well, more so as a polar photographer. I know you do a lot of other stuff around that. That's sort of how I came across you. In terms of, so what would be your sort of most accomplished mission, and with who would you say, in terms of, or expedition, sorry, where you've been sort of documenting, you know, a trip in one of the polar regions that you've thought, no, this is why I'm doing this?
It's a good question.
Is that the first good question? Thanks.
Wasn't that good, Will? No, these are all good questions. Well, one expedition springs to mind, but the answer to that question, first of all, is that expedition hasn't really happened yet. That's my next expedition, my magnus opus. Sophie Roberts,
which we'll come on to. These are past expeditions.
Yeah. So I did an expedition in 1999 to ski up a frozen, walk, stumble, fall up a frozen river in the northern Himalayas in India, the Zanskar River, because the Indian Army had decided to build a road along the canyon that goes from Leh to this village called Padden. It's 150 miles, and it's the only way in and out of the village for 8 months of the year. So we went in winter, when the river was hopefully at its most frozen coldest, to photograph and document and do a story. I was with a writer called Paul Deegan about the village and what they thought of the new road that was going to be built. Because as soon as a road was built, that culture would evaporate. So I've got some photographs now of a culture that was thriving in 1999 and has now evaporated more or less since the building of the road, because it means traffic can go in and out, and tourists can go in and out all year round now.
Yeah.
So, and that was when I really first learned that my camera would get me into people's lives and into their home and into their own personal stories, which is, for me, it's a critical part of documentary photography, is learning about people's stories around the world and bringing them back so we can all learn from what's going on in the world. Without photography, they wouldn't really have a clue what's going on in terms of news or conservation or science. Without photography, photography has become the biggest global language of it, and that's indisputable now. 100 years ago, photography was something that only professionals did. Now we all have cameras, we all take pictures, we all bring stories back home. You know, we see them on all sorts of social platforms. Not all good stories, not all worthy stories, but everyone now has a common language.
But it's a very valid point in terms of, you know, and I think that that's been positive in some ways, that people have more access to be photographers themselves, and also it means that everything is sort of inundated with images the whole time. But so how do you set yourself apart in terms of trying to make yourself different to, you know, everyone that has an iPhone out there nowadays? And, you know, in terms of how do you approach that for a different angle on what you're doing? Because you seem to be successful at doing it. What's the sort of secret?
Secret is being genuinely interested in your subject. I mean, really interested in your subject, because if, you know, I love what I do. I love the subjects I choose to go and photograph. And that is probably what separates me from people who are not photographers, who are just casual acquaintances with whatever they're photographing. And, you know, Instagram is just so full of absolute shit. It's really hard to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
But when you do find the good stuff, it makes you stop and look and read.
Yeah.
people's threshold of what's a good photograph is pretty low. So it's not that difficult to make an impact with a good photograph, I don't think.
Yeah. And that sort of angle of what you're driven and passionate about, that's meant that you've done the polar regions obviously a lot. What's the you hinted at it then. What's your next big project that's coming up? What's the plan?
So I did an expedition in 2017 with a climate journalist called Bernice Norton-Boom, and I was with Anne Daniels, and we were working with the NASA Ice Bridge project to measure snow depth on the surface of the Arctic Ocean. So we got dropped off south of the North Pole, 200 miles, and then we skied back to the North Pole from the Russian side on a transect that the Ice Bridge team gave us, which was literally underneath the flight path of the satellite that measures snow depth. And on the expedition, I didn't see any piece of ice that was higher than my knee or my hip for 200 miles, almost. Hardly. It was like skiing across a lake, which that is not the character of the Arctic Ocean that I know. The character of that place is massive blocks of ice piled on top of each other that are difficult to get over or around or through. And I was skiing for 200 miles, I was skiing on something that looked like a lake, a frozen lake.
Amazing.
And I came back and thought, something's wrong here. So I had a look online, because all information is online, and tried to find where the big sea ice was. And it's all of it is pushed up against the North Canadian coast on Ellesmere Island. What used to cover 5 million square miles of the Arctic Ocean now covers less than 0.5% of that ice that can survive multiple summers. That's called multi-year sea ice, which is the stuff we need up there to reflect the solar radiation back into outer space. And it's the rest of the ice that's up there now is either first year ice or second year ice. First year ice forms in the winter and then it's all gone in the summer. The second year ice is ice that survived one summer and a winter, and then that gets either blown out or it melts because of the temperature of the water heating it up, melting it, or there's air temperature. So those pieces of ice are just magnificent. Huge, great big cathedrals of ice piled on top of each other, and no one's photographed them really, not hardly at all. I've only seen that kind of ice definitely twice, maybe 3 times, I'm not sure. But without photographs of those pieces of ice, we won't really have any, because when the ships go up in the summer, the science research ships go up in the summer, the ice, they don't go near where that ice is.
Yeah.
Because they can't get to it because it's landlocked, or ice locked rather. Pushed up against. So I'm going back there to photograph these pieces of ice because no one has.
Are these what you call? These are the ice sentinels. Is that what?
Yes, that's a word I chose to describe them because.
I know it's always stuck in my head, and I think it's fantastic. It's such a sort of, I don't know, exciting, romantic sort of explorer. I love it. It's brilliant. The last ice.
Well, the weird thing is, I came up with that because I was thinking of a word that described a protector, and a sentinel is, I think it's the last guard before you enter a palace. It's the last person, the last piece of security before you get into an old palace. And then I was at the European Space Agency in Amsterdam, talking to them about sea ice, and I saw on the desk there was a mouse mat with the word Sentinel-3 on it and a drawing of a satellite. The satellites that measure sea ice thickness in the Arctic and in Antarctica are called Sentinel-3 satellite. How serendipitous is that?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So you're planning on sort of monitoring these, hopefully getting out there and sort of, was it GPS tracking them to see in terms of the sort of how quickly they're disappearing and what the future is as such?
Yes, the plan is the scientists have asked us to take samples of the interface between the bottom of the multi-year sea ice and the sea water, because that is the bottom of the food chain, which will tell them the health of the Arctic Ocean itself, which is critical. And we were going to drill down through the ice and drop down a sensor that will relay back via a transmitter the temperature through the middle of the ice from the surface into the water, and that information will be used on a display back on a computer screen so that people can watch the temperature of these last pieces of ice and ultimately, sadly, watch them disappear and fade away and become extinct.
And how long do you think they've got sort of left?
Some scientists believe it's as little as all the old multi-year sea ice will be gone by 2030, and all the sea ice on the Arctic Ocean will be completely gone by 2090. So the term ice-free means less than 100,000 square miles of sea ice.
Yep.
So that once, by 2050, there's going to be ships passing across the North Pole all year round because of the sea ice will be gone, and they won't need icebreakers to go through it. You can do it in a normal container ship. That's
amazing, isn't it? We even see that in Svalbard in terms of the seasons starting earlier and earlier. It was sort of May, June, now it's sort of end of March, April, in terms of just being able to get up and access around Svalbard and stuff like that. It's changing quickly, isn't it?
It is. It's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And for a couple of years, I did suffer a little bit of climate anxiety, because you immerse yourself in this area, and the more you know, the more terrifying it becomes. And that information isn't really filtering down into the press. We see these glorious headlines of sea ice going and Greenland's disappearing, and it is all true, but people cannot access why that's important to them.
Yeah.
And people won't change behaviours until it affects their health or their wallet.
Yeah.
Once it starts to do that, and they understand that what we do here, me included, turning a light on, turning the heating up, affects what's happens in Greenland and Antarctica and the Arctic. Once we realise that what we do here has an impact on ourselves because of the effect it's having thousands of miles away, then only then will we change our behaviour.
But how do we do that? I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, and it's been, climate change has been sort of a subheading for years, hasn't it? You know what I mean? And whether it's in election campaigns or whatever, it's always there in the background. But how do we get people to sort of sit up and take notice of it? I know you went to COP26, earlier this year, didn't you? Which I think you really enjoyed again. And that was another example, I think you said, of your photography getting you access into areas and being able to interact in an area that you're passionate about and stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah. So COP26 was probably the most, sounds grand, but I believe this to be true. I think COP26 was the most important meeting of minds in human history. We've had lots of COPs, lots of conference of parties coming together to say what scientists telling the politicians what's happening in the world and what we should do about it, and the politicians go away and do nothing. Probably the best example of right now is Wally Herbert crossed the Arctic Ocean in 1969 from Point Barrow in Alaska across to Svalbard.
Right.
And in his expedition report, because he did lots of science on that journey with Fritz Kerner, he concluded that just a small rise in global average temperature of 2 degrees Celsius would be enough to melt the entire Arctic Ocean ice pack in just a few years. That was in 1969. That's 54 years ago.
Mm.
So we knew then that if the global average temperatures did rise of more than 2 degrees centigrade, the Arctic Ocean would be gone. And we knew that before. I think the momentum, the will to want to change is gathering, but people cannot do it themselves. We, as a species, just cannot. Once lockdown's lifted, it's business as usual for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah. I think that was, I think we even spoke, didn't we, at the beginning of COVID, and it was, whilst obviously a huge issue, COVID, you were sort of...
COVID is not... Sorry, Will, COVID is not an issue. If you compare COVID to climate change, I mean, global terrorism is not an issue for human beings. It's not.
And why do you say that in terms of... Just talk me through that.
Because global weather change will affect every single human being on a planet, no matter where they live, whether they're rich or poor. You cannot hide from it. COVID is just a tiny little scratch on the surface of our daily lives.
It is, but it was, I think, and I completely agree with you, but I think I was sort of excited because it seemed to be a wake-up call to, the world in terms of this has happened, which was a result of climate change as well. Let's not forget that, as far as I understand, in terms of that came about through deforestation, through, human wildlife encroachment, wet markets, et cetera, et cetera. These are all results of climate change, and that results in COVID and these viruses that go around, yet we still do not sit up and take notice of that. When COVID, and why I said it was sort of, at first it was a problem, is because you see, everyone was in lockdown, you see wildlife walking down the streets, and you sort of think, hang on a minute, this could be the wake-up call that the world needs. This could change, in terms of maybe we're going to sit up and take notice and actually understand why this is all happening. And then I think what's been hugely disappointing, sort of as we've seen in the last 6 months, and I'm guilty of it as well, but everyone is cranking up the machines as quickly as possible again. You know what I mean? And it's not, and it doesn't really seem to have changed anyone's priorities at all. And that's a pretty sad state of affairs, isn't it? And that links into COP26 and everything. It's like, well, great, we've had another meeting, but what's, in terms of, I follow it quite closely. I can't say what specifically come out of it and how we're going to hugely change things as a result of COP26 or COVID, really.
No, that's true. I was hopeful as well that the lockdown would make people think differently about the way they behave, but no, everything's exactly back to where it was before lockdown. COP26.
Apart from I'm sitting in hotel quarantine now, which is, a highlight of my last 18 months.
The conversation is growing around climate change and what we must do. So that's good that the conversations are happening more and more. And one thing that came out of COP was we already have all the solutions to stop relying on fossil fuels. All the solutions, the technology is available to us now. We just need to, I think governments just need to start enforcing that we need to start using it and start drifting away from our desperate need for oil.
That's a good place really to almost finish, I think. I mean, I think we need to sort of try and focus and bring these things to the fore more, don't we? And really, I think the last Ice Sentinels project, I think that's a great thing to sort of finish on. Maybe just tell us when you're trying to hope to get that going again, and that would be a nice way to round it off.
Yeah, well, the last Ice Sentinels project more than likely is going to happen in 2023 now, because we're still going to raise funds to do that. And I'm sort of an amazingly hugely important project to go and photograph something that people haven't seen and won't see in the future generations. So to document something that's going to become extinct is quite a responsibility. So that's my main driving force to do it. And while doing that, send out the message that this ice is going to become extinct and we do need it and we need to stop it. So because the Arctic Ocean hasn't really got a voice, and if I can give it a voice or make it heard to the people that need to hear what is happening to it, that don't understand how important it is to our daily lives back here, I think it's a really important mission to do for me as a photographer. But it's also quite sad to go and photograph something that I've been a part of destroying as well with my life and energy consumption. I'm complicit, same as everyone is. So,
but I think if we understand that and we're understanding of it and we're doing what we can to sort of, bring that to the attention of others, that's the best we can do at the moment, isn't it? But we need some big shifts and quickly, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
But thank you very much. That's brilliant. It's really good to talk to you. You're a great friend, and I'm a great admirer of everything that you do. And we need more people like you sort of getting out there and showing us the way. But thank you very much.